It's my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. People writing songs and voices never shared. And no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words, like silent raindrops, fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning, and the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second live episode of SCARS, Shared Compassion and Resource Services for the First Responder. I'm Patrick Clark, and we're going to go down the table just like we do every night. We're going to introduce the two other fine gentlemen sitting next to me, and we're going to dive into tonight's topic that we've chosen for the
Yes.
night. So, without further ado, who are you, sir?
As always, Dylan Olavito, founder of the SCARS. Again, I see we only have about 12 on so far. Hopefully we can gain that number a little bit higher tonight. Some important topics tonight as we talk about COVID and how it affected us as first responders. So welcome to the show. And to my left,
Hagan. Yeah, Josh Hagan. I'm glad to be here as always. Thanks for coming this evening. We appreciate everybody that's listening in. We're up to 13 now, so we'll start off and start rocking and rolling.
dive right in.
So that's first of all, everybody that joined our last live session was our first one, and it was I think we kind of described it as basically a round robin or just a BS session. We didn't know that we were going to be able to
A
do
learning
it.
session.
There you go, a learning
A
session.
learning session, yes.
But we had a lot of fun. We got to talk a lot about sensitive subjects. There were several things. That we identified throughout. We were on there for just over an hour, and there were several things that we identified during that time regarding our mental health and how much it sucks. And honestly, that's how you got to the brainchild of Scars.
That's where it all started at, right? Is because me personally came to a point in my career where I just couldn't do it anymore, and that got me thinking a lot about that. So as we progress this thing forward, and I see we're up to 19 now, 21, I love it. We've taken some feedback, and we know now that we're on YouTube. Of course, we can't go live on YouTube till we hit 50 subscribers. We're on Instagram. Do we do live on Instagram, or how does that?
You can't do it.
Can't do live on Instagram. So,
follow us.
but we're getting more followers and more people that are really excited about the subject, who want to get involved with the subject matter, who feel that this is needed. We, all three of us sitting at this table, grew up with the deal with it attitude. You all can't see what's over to our right, but there's a round table over there. Eventually, when we're going to start having guests, that's going to become our kitchen table, where we want you to bring your story to us. What was your breaking point? When did you realize that you weren't okay? And what have you done, or what do you want to help do to keep others from getting to that situation as well?
So one of the things that you just said was that you couldn't do it anymore, but we've all been trained to do it. No matter how we feel, no matter what's going on in our life, no matter whether it's personal business, whether it's work business, whether it's fire business, whether it's EMS business. And when you say that, you got to the breaking point where you couldn't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. We've learned to deal with that, and this is that outlet to be able to talk about how we move forward. And like Patrick and I talked about last time, there's no fix. There's no fix to this.
There's no magic potion.
Absolutely not.
We were taught to take care of others and not take care of ourselves. And I think that's where the important thing comes from. And what you find out, if you do a little bit of study, a little bit of research, you find out that 90% of the people that get into fire, EMS, or even law enforcement suffered some kind of trauma when they were younger. All three of us were kind of legacies where our family members were a part of it. So naturally it became something that we grew up around a firehouse, or we grew up around an ambulance, or so on and so forth. But now we see a lot of first responders who come into the game already having mental health trauma, and sometimes getting in the field exacerbates that.
So it's funny that we mentioned that we came from the legacy. Mm-hmm. Your grandfather
was fire chief when I first started hanging around. Yeah.
Your dad
and grandfather. My grandfather was a captain at Pittsburgh Fire Department. Yeah.
My dad was in EMS and fire forever. I mean, it's kind of like the family tradition. But now we're seeing people come to EMS especially, and fire, I guess. You're seeing them walk in off the street, 18, 19-year-old kids. We're putting them through a training program, if they even offer that. Throwing them keys to a truck or whatever, and we're saying, go down the road and do your thing. And, there's no prep work for any of this.
No.
And we're killing the future because we're failing them. And we're failing them because, I don't know, how about we take just a second and say, listen, you're going to see some stuff that's not going to be okay. You're going to witness something. You're going to hold a lifeless child in your arms. that was that was one of my breaking points.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
And times have changed, you know.
Right.
I mean, we joined because, you know, we got to do cool things. We rode big red fire trucks and put out house fires and help people. The dynamic has changed, and you sit there and you ask yourself, you know, do I really want my kid to follow my footsteps now? You know, do I want to, you know, my kid talks about it, and God bless her, you know, she wants to help other people too, but do you really want, you know, 20, 30 years down the road for her to have the same trauma that we go through and, you know, not have a good outlet? So I think that the first thing is having a good outlet and realizing that there are folks out there similar. There are other outlets that you can depend on, and we want to be that outlet, and we want to grow our force. We want, you know, each of our followers, each of our listeners, everybody that's watching, to become an outlet as well, and that's what we're here to do. And as we grow this thing and we get some funding for this thing, we want to teach you. We want to bring you in and we want to teach. You know, again, I think we talked about it a little bit last week, but strike teams. You know, we've seen this week alone a line of duty death, a suicide of a first responder. We're already in the double digits for first responder suicide for the year. And we're not even through February. That's astronomical. That's unheard of. That's never happened before. So
that's a problem.
We're in times that we have not dealt with.
Some of the things you just said, though, going back, Dylan, with some of that stuff is locally.
Sure.
Some of the suicides are locally. Some of the deaths are locally, and some of them are natural causes, but they're locally, and we have to deal with those. So how do we deal with those? How do we take those important people in our world and in our listeners' world to make a difference?
We fail to recognize.
Yeah.
And from a first responder community, and I think what breaks my heart even more is not only from a first responder community who should be able to pick up the phone and call their colleague, their friends, their partner, whatever, but you know, we're breaking this down even to children now. You know, at no point should we not recognize that our children are struggling, but we've gotten to this point where we miss the signs. So part of that teaching, part of the classes that we are exploring and looking into is recognizing those signs, recognizing that something's off, and taking those steps to try to prevent that from happening.
But and then you throw COVID in on top of this,
Which was going to be the topic tonight, and still is going to be.
But I think that this is a good segue point to put into that, to add in right now is, you know, you take on already stressful job of public safety.
Yeah.
You know, day in, day out, between law enforcement having to fight the defund the police crap that was going around, between fire departments not being able to get enough people to get a truck out the door. I mean, paid fire departments struggling to get people, mandating overtime. The video we watched last week from Florida.
Yeah.
You know, mandatory overtime just so they can fill a truck.
Right.
And then EMS on top of it, you know, making sure that you have enough staffing to keep trucks on the road. And then you throw in a whole other layer of hell that we called COVID-19. And what did we do and we talked about this right before the show. What happened to the public safety realm at that point in time? And there are two different thoughts.
Absolutely. And one of the things that with the thoughts and one of the things that we talked about during, you know, before we started going live was the community became first responders. They had to deal with things that they weren't accustomed to. They had to deal with things that we as first responders dealt with on a regular basis. When COVID-19 first come out, it was what? It was, oh my gosh, it was the closest thing that we ever came to a zombie apocalypse. Oh my gosh, we're all dying.
You're right, but so, you know, and I think Patrick can attest. And so with you, Josh, and now don't take this wrong, but you come from strictly the fire side. So us from the EMS side, you know, First thing right out of the gate at 16, 17 years old, I had to go get Hep B vaccination.
Yeah.
That 3-set shot that was absolutely terrible. Then we went through, what did we go through? Swine flu, bird flu, H1N1, all this stuff that was going to just decimate us all, right?
Kill us.
And we kept working. Well, then COVID-19 comes. So, and immediately starts the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates. So my first question, and I hope a few people on our live feed will comment on this. If COVID-23 started today, would you get vaccinated?
If you're asking me, no.
Okay.
No.
I want to hear. I want to see some comments. Would you get vaccinated? Would you get your family and friends and kids vaccinated?
You know, you look at, and Josh and I were talking about this prior to the stream starting, but you know, you look at all the things that happened, the progression. Look, whenever Governor Justice first presented COVID-19, you know, the tidal wave is coming. We're going to see deaths upon deaths upon deaths upon deaths, and it's like, I mean, the media scared the world. They did a great job at it too, and you know, but now, you know, we're 3 years into this, and it's just like, we really don't even know if you needed this, but we gave it to you anyway. And guess what? Don't worry. You don't even have to wear a mask now. It's fine. It's just COVID.
WVU Medicine actually dropped their mask mandate at the beginning of this week. So, you know, but, you know, the pandemic's over. Yet I attended a class this past week where 2 people didn't come to the class because they were COVID positive. So where's that balance, right? And not only that, but now, you know, we got our kid her first shot. You know, did I do my kid? You know, go look on Pfizer and look for the side effects. Do you know that one of the side effects for the Pfizer vaccine in bold letters is depression?
That's exactly what this group needs.
Yeah,
Exactly
Are you
what
saying
this
that's
group
3
needs.
years?
yeah. Well, yeah, us 3 too. But you know, you think about that. Like, we signed up and stood in line to get something that nobody really knew anything about because the government said it was safe.
But it wasn't a fact of that. It's if you worked for an employer that mandate. How many employers immediately jumped and said
Right
mandate, have to have it,
Yeah.
or you don't work here anymore?
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
whoa. Or then you could you could do like the religious exemption, or there were some other exemptions that you could apply.
And
for.
we're talking big agencies. I mean, yes, where we worked, we got it. You know, we were at the front of the line, and hook us up, give me the shot. But you know, let's look at FDNY. They lost almost half of their workforce to either early retirement or just plain getting fired. And now they're trying to call these folks back to say, oh, we screwed up. You know, this isn't what we thought it was. So that has taken its mental toll on a lot of our first responders as well. And
if you look at, you know, you look at the trial programs, or whatever you call it, when it comes to or the testing phase of these vaccines. You know, the testing phase of a medicine before COVID was years. I mean, the FDA was like, I mean, they were stringent, and now it's fine. Just
Overnight.
Yeah, I mean, it was within weeks.
so who made the money there? I mean,
Oh yeah, you know, it's
follow
a
the money.
pharmaceutical company.
Follow the money.
But I mean, to highlight some of our people watching, there's mixed emotions.
I'm receiving an overwhelming no
Well,
for the
there
most
are.
part.
and there are people that highlight one thing: having a choice. I wouldn't. What if you don't have a choice?
Well,
Jason, it's good to see you on, buddy. I'm glad you joined us.
So one of the things, and we mentioned this before we started up, and as our listeners hopefully know, we meet probably an hour before, 2 hours before, and the things that are talked about here are unbelievable of where we're at and what we're doing and what our goal is. And one of the things, I was with you. You know, I see my mom's listening, and she sent me a text message, and I was actually with you and Pat Kowalczyk, and we were going to pick up an engine in Ohio, and on the way there, she sent me a text message, and she was like, "Hey, listen," she's like, I'm COVID positive, and there's a chance that you're probably COVID positive.
Which
And-
became great because if any of you seen the movie Ace Ventura, where he drives down the road with his head out the window, all three of us going to Ohio in a fire truck with our heads out the window. Fantastic.
But
I would-
glorious, right? But
I would love to see your hair flapping in the wind. The one.
Why do we have hair jokes? At the end of the day, though, I felt awful because, oh my gosh, we're all going to turn into zombies. You know, like
Right.
it was so new. It was so new to all of us that we didn't know what was going to happen. What was, death, and
But that's all that was talked about.
that was all.
Yeah.
That's what the media put out.
But what we also did was we started putting a separation between our first responders, and I think there was togetherness, but there was separation because as we got further into this, and you started watching EMS with the respirators and the N95s and so on and so forth, suddenly you watched fire department and PD going, "Not my problem." Like they would stand at the front door and hand you the equipment and say, "Have fun."
Would they hand you the equipment, or would they put the equipment on the
Well,
front ramp and then shut the doors and say, "Hey, it's here"?
They put a 10-foot window, and so you watched EMS and PD and fire start to walk away from each other, and in a sense of a transmission standpoint, where and then we were going home, right? So every day, were you doing a different routine? So were you undressing outside, taking a shower before you greeted your family? Did you go, maybe was there a point between? So there was a lot to deal with that we didn't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
the best part of it, though, is what really set it off was the first time that I had an exposure. I can remember, like, I was quarantined at my station, but I was quarantined outside. And that was it. Like, there was, like, I was just outside.
Right.
And if somebody wanted to come talk to me, they were from here to the little table in the corner, and they were yelling at me. Mm-hmm. And now,
Hello, Patrick. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
But I mean, and I mean, how does, like, to me, I'm sitting over here going, wait a second, if I have to be that far from you, how far do I have to be from my kid? How far do I have to be from my
Right.
wife?
yeah.
Yeah.
The people that, I mean, the people that I love, my parents.
Could you go home and pick up your kid at night and feel good about it?
No.
Right.
Not without going through a whole freaking decon process.
Well,
but
right.
even then, you never knew. You didn't know if you were exposed or not.
Absolutely.
That's the scary part.
But think of every time that you were exposed and you knew that you were exposed. Understand that when they came across the radio and said, COVID positive, we're in staging. And that was a separation.
That
That's
was a
where
very
I
big
felt.
thing.
Fire department's got to do that. Yeah.
Fire department volunteers,
Even-
especially. Well, I don't
even-
know
Well,
about
even
paid.
paid.
Okay, but I can't speak. I cannot speak of paid, but a volunteer.
Sure.
Hey, now
Right.
wait a minute.
Right.
I do this for fun. I do this because this is my inner calling. This is because of what I've been taught. This is my tradition. And now wait a minute. Maybe I signed up for something more than what I should have. We're going to stage in station.
No, it was what we were trained to do when we were younger. It was still helping people.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then so and I can tell you right now, the levels got worse, right? So, I've seen somebody who Tyvek suits,
Marshawn.
Yeah.
So Tyvek suits, that was a huge deal, right? So, and I can remember going and flying, and Tyvek suits, gloves, booties, mask on, and in the summertime, it's already 95 degrees. You got all that stuff on. It's 125 degrees. We were working at our wits' end.
Yeah.
And what that ended up doing is that ended up chasing a lot of first responders off, both volunteer and paid. Mm-hmm. I don't, and again, I'm looking for, Jason, maybe you can answer on this. I see that you're on there. I don't know if it did a whole lot for the law enforcement community, but we had people just walk away.
Yeah.
I do believe that there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,600 EMTs and paramedics who just didn't recert during the 2020 2020 or 2021 that
Research
just said,
cycle.
I'm done.
Chris is on. Shout out to Chris Batlow. Because he would have been.
Hey, Nick, they're still for bed bugs, by the way, bud.
That's valid. But Chris would have been on at that point in time to. I mean, did you see anything? You know, put it in the chat. Did you see anything of the amount of people that we didn't see go through the research process?
Yeah, Chris would have known that because he was working with us on a lot of research
Education.
stuff back then. How many do you think we lost? You know, between Chris Batlow and Dave Maddox, they could probably tell me down to about within 10 of how many we lost during COVID. But I promise you that we lost a healthy amount of first responders.
Yeah.
We lost volunteers.
But it's not only like there were agencies that were, because their call volume got affected, they were doing mandatory layoffs. Or I'm sorry, not mandatory. Well, some were doing mandatory.
Well,
like not around
the
here,
agency that we worked for at that time was doing it was not mandated, but it was a voluntary thing.
Furlough.
Yeah, furlough of employment. And we even seen that with hospitals, I believe. I know, non-invasive or non-emergent surgery stuff, shut down. So people weren't going to work.
Chris said between the two agencies that he could remember, approximately 30.
And that's just two agencies.
30.
Think about that, two agencies.
So
Think about an agency, a small agency though, that doesn't even have 30 people. That's
Somebody has to pick up that slack.
But imagine a volunteer world. Hey, we need the community. We need help. We need everything that evolves around the volunteer world is exactly that, volunteer. And we need you. I ain't helping. I want you to think of how hard it is. It's hard enough to recruit in the volunteer world.
I'm in my quarantine period. I'll get with you in 21 days.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and we talked about this earlier. He actually called me. He's like, hey, he said, we got a line of duty death. He said, I need help with cleaning up a flag. And I ran down to the fire hall and I brought him everything he needed to clean up the flag. And I walked in and people were like, what are you doing? You're within 24 hours of...
That was a COVID death, too.
Yes.
You believe that?
Within 24 hours. It was. That's right.
Yes.
Within 24 hours of you being able to come back and volunteering your time.
We'll run back to that. Jason answered me there.
Jason said, not that I know of in Mon County, but across the United States, we lost thousands of law enforcement officers because of vaccine mandates. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and that all this was going on, and Jason, please correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but put vaccine mandates, now put on top of it the defund the police, because that was all going on at the exact same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you guys know Jason or not, but huge shout out, military background, police, fire, and EMS. So guys got some knowledge clear across the spectrum on it. So thanks for the input, buddy.
So counties grew together.
Imagine that.
Could you?
I'll highlight Kanawha County, for example, where my dad used to work. They obtained this PPE from the health departments and the state, basically, and they were farming them out to volunteer fire departments and flagging them, or just everywhere. Just here's equipment. Make sure you wear this. And then, to your point, volunteer fire departments were going, this ain't happening because this is volunteer, and I got to go home to my family, and I have to go to my real job. And so, So
they did get affected. They couldn't go to work.
But the EMS couldn't get PPE sometimes.
Right.
How quickly did we run into a shortage? The agency you and I came from.
It was shortage nationwide.
Right. Look at
It
ventilators.
wasn't
Because they were made in China. I'm sorry. That was off the cuff. I'm very sorry
That's
for
before.
that.
First of all, that's before we decided to shoot down any balloons. All right.
right. And we don't even want to get into that subject just yet.
But I mean, that was the. But that was the thing. You got EMS that can't get the stuff. You got hospitals can't get the stuff. and we were giving it out to the fire departments. The fire department's like, well, screw you, because we're not running these calls anyway, because, we have to go to our jobs too. What do you, I mean, it was such an ugly time. To me, though, and this is where we had, but basically it was a 2 against 1, because I said, immediately I told you guys, well, I think it brought us closer together, and you both looked at me and you're like, how about no?
Silos. I felt like silos instantly went up because it turned into, did they say COVID positive? And not only did they say it was COVID positive, Patrick, that's your job. That ain't my job.
Right.
And as a volunteer, we're
I'm
going
not
to be
going to interrupt
staging
you,
and
but
stationed.
Courtney, I want you to expand on that. A different level of fear. Tell me what that means.
Read the comment before. So it says mandatory quarantine with no pay when it first started. So
yeah.
before Biden put in that thing of you had to
Gotcha.
pay your people.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have enough paid time off, but yet you had to be quarantined because you had that exposure. And Courtney, please feel free to, if I'm not speaking correctly of what you're saying, but at what point in time, well, you're forcing me to be off. You're not paying me.
Right.
I'm using my own,
Yep.
my own PTO, my own annual leave, whatever. And now, am I going to be, what's my paycheck going to look like?
That's
Am I going to
right.
have enough to cover the bills?
That's right.
Am I going to keep the lights on? Am I going to feed my family?
That's a very Brian Anderson. We had a volunteer firefighter that would pull up on EMS calls and sit in their truck to tell us, holler at them if they were needed. Yeah, we've seen that a lot from the EMS side.
But what happened if they said, "Hey, we need you"?
Right. Yeah. Did you run into that? So at that point, then what? Did they actually come and help, or
Yeah.
And if they did they come in an SCBA, or what did they do? I mean, because
But that's
was
what
a
the
thing.
time was.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Look at Chris Batlow. We had to retrain on some medications because we couldn't get them. We had to bring medications back
Right.
when we ran into shortages.
Sure.
So there.
Jason, thank you, Jason. He said defund the police, rioting, and COVID. All of them happened.
All at the same time.
Right now,
It was
bam,
a
bam, bam.
Yes.
Absolutely,
It
was a
absolutely.
nightmare.
But
He
even
couldn't
with
have said
that,
better.
even
Absolute mess.
with what Jason's saying, there are. My wife made a comment earlier today. She was like, out of every 10 police officers, 9 of them have been bad and one's been good. And instantly, I fired back and said no. And what I've seen, 9 of them have been amazing and one's been bad. And that's the relationships that we have built with our brothers and sisters that are behind the badge, and our experiences. In this past week, I was pulled over for
Shocker.
speeding. It's the first time in 20 years.
Oh, whatever.
Mom, don't comment on this, but it was the first time in 20 years that I've been pulled over, and the police officer that pulled me over, I mean, as soon as he come up to the window, what a butthead. And this is beyond COVID. So, each of us are exposed to, or what I tell you earlier, Patrick, it comes down to what we deal with is our truth, and how we see it is our experiences.
Perception is reality.
Perception's reality.
reality.
Absolutely. And I, going back to, we have listeners right now tonight that aren't of fire, of EMS,
Right.
and
Or just
and
interested in the topic.
just
hopefully.
interested in, and I just reading this. We had somebody, Adam DeMarco's making posts on here about his wife gave birth to their newborn child. How'd they deal with it?
But it's the folks like him who did not, who have no idea what we went through
Yeah,
as those front line.
we're supposed to be the helpers.
And not only us, I want to expand on that, the folks in the ER, the folks in the ORs, the folks on the ICUs, can you imagine going to work, and let's say you're in an ICU and you have 4 or 5 patients, and you have to undon and redon that stuff every time you go into a patient room. Now, they don't get a chance to sit down and do a decon, or they don't get a chance to go back to the station and put themselves out of service for a second.
Yeah.
So across the board, we have really hurt our medical profession, our fire profession, our law enforcement. And I can't say enough about, out of all of it, the law enforcement got the worst, because I think Jason's really onto something there, because the rioting, the things that happen in law enforcement, the defund the police, all of a sudden fire and EMS were the heroes because we were those out there facing COVID, and nobody gave law enforcement any credit.
Yeah.
Well, 9 times out of 10, law enforcement gets there before any of us do. And to be quite truthful, there were times they were exposed to the COVID long before we even knew.
Know.
Yeah,
they didn't even know.
Yeah, so a huge shout out to our law enforcement community. We'll always back the blue. That's part of what we stand for here.
That's right.
And I appreciate,
Jason brought up a good point. If we were exposed and weren't vaxxed, we either used sick time or we didn't get paid.
Right. And I think Courtney
What?
said the same thing.
Yeah, Courtney said
that's basically the
Yeah.
same thing Courtney said
And-
in the
but
beginning.
you take public safety out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being exposed because of your job, and your job says, can't stay here.
Yeah.
You got to go home, or you can't go home. I mean, Emily said, went 4 months without being able to see my family.
Yeah.
It was scary. It was like for me to travel back to Charleston. Like
Right.
my whole 2-hour drive home, I'm thinking, all right, I ran this call the other day. There was potential of it there. My immunocompromised mother at the time.
Chris, good point. Yeah, PD was the last to get proper PPE.
Well, multiple times, yeah.
Yeah.
Because in so many people's mind, they weren't exposed to it. When in
When in
reality,
fact they were.
They were the first ones exposed to it. They were the first ones showing up. They were the first ones in small municipalities, especially, saying, "Hey, I'm on scene, and yes, it's a full arrest," or yes, it's
Well, even a car accident scene,
Absolutely.
that you don't know. But what I found amazing was the way that we were able to clear out our hospitals. What does that tell us? I mean, we personally watched WVU clear out complete floors, in case COVID got too bad. So
I can remember when COVID units started.
yeah, and COVID units and so on and so forth. So it took its toll on first responders, and some folks decided that this isn't for me anymore. And we lost a lot of good providers, a lot of seasoned providers, and that's why we see the fact now that we have so much youth out there in the EMS industry, especially, that are starting off as MVOs and learning along the way and slowly getting their EMT, and almost have no idea what's ahead of them. And I think that's where we become important. And I think that's where we become the sounding board and the voice that we're not going to let this go on. We're going to have somewhere safe. You could come to us and sit right here with us and watch this and talk to us afterwards or whatever. But number one, I want our audience to be informed. Whatever information we have, we're going to share. What information you have, I want you to share amongst your peers, your colleagues, the general public that's watching us, whomever. And let's make a difference, and let's change this.
One of the things that should be highlighted, if you take Pat Kowalczyk, for example, what happened to the funeral business during COVID?
Right.
All the mandates, requirements, and then to bury somebody during COVID times.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Churches.
Well,
Look at
even
churches.
before they even got to Pat or any of the other funeral homes, you couldn't go say goodbye. You couldn't go into the hospital. You couldn't go in. You couldn't step foot in the hospital. Only certain people were allowed in the hospital, and only X amount of people. So only if you had a family member that was dying, they had X amount of people that were able to go in because of how crazy it was.
Excellent comment by Emily. It's been 11 years in EMS. The calls didn't kill my drive. COVID killed it. Yeah. And for me, it was a combination, Emily, but I think you're exactly right. COVID killed a lot of our drive. It killed us it killed our partners. And you know, we actually did see people die from it. You know, most of those folks had comorbidities or so on and so forth. But yeah, we did watch the worst effects of it in our industry. You know, and like Chris mentioned there, you know, the nurses were a part of that team that watched that all happen and it went through the hell of it. But yes, you're right. It definitely killed my drive, and it changed the way that I feel about EMS. It changed the way I feel about fire. It changed me as a person. It has changed my mentality tenfold, and that's something that's very hard to deal with even to this day. You know, we're 4 years now?
3 years.
3 years post the beginning of it.
My son was born in June the 3rd of 2020.
In the midst of it.
Right in the middle. He's a go.
I think Adam said the same thing. And he got ran out of the hospital. And he's a guy that's not involved in fire and EMS, but suffered from
Same thing.
something from COVID.
The regulations that I had to follow during that time. Number one, I was fully gowned. You had to be fully gowned, mask, hair nets. I looked like a middle school lunch lady. It was ridiculous. And there's nothing that.
I bet that was terrible.
Oh yeah.
My wife would probably agree. Probably was terrible. But there was so much separation between your child, the child you just brought into this world, that my wife brought into this world, and I can't hold him immediately.
Yeah.
They have to they have to whisk him away into some negative pressurized room, and then I was able to go. I mean, it was just all the things you had to do, and I was like, good, come on, man. And then to highlight what you said, when the workforce suffered, we started accepting anybody and everybody. We'll do whatever. We'll train you. We'll hire you. We'll pay you while we're training you. We'll do whatever. And we got really good people at that point in time.
Sure.
Because we got people that were like, well, we just found this. We were looking for a job, and they embraced it. They found a love. But we're going to go right back down to the same horrible circle if we don't jump on it right now. Should have been 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But saying, hey, you're getting ready to walk into a world of hell.
And that's my point. And to the listeners, all I know is a volunteer. I don't know the EMS. I don't know the full-time job of EMS. All I know is volunteers. And in 30 years, I can't tell you not one time where I've ever had to stand guard outside of any fire department that I've ever been affiliated with to be able to guard the door from people overtaking the firehouse to trying to join.
Right.
And now we have this, and this isn't the right time to join. This isn't the time that people are raising their hands saying, "Oh, pick me, pick me." I would have loved to have a Pro-B during that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how do you grow that organization? Because the volunteer world is so important to the nation. How do you grow that when life's throwing us a heartache? And I'm not taking anything away from the EMS or the police, not at all. Yes, it's your job, but at the same time, you're getting paid to do it, or you're not getting paid to do it because of the situations that we talked about. Now, I'm asking people to do it for free. So how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tough bridge to cross. It really is. And I don't
You're not going to pay me?
I don't think any of us
kidding
have
me?
a good solution.
What do you mean you're not going to pay me?
I don't think there's a good solution for that across the board. I really don't.
I mean, my going rate's $20 an hour. So
Is it? That's cheap in this day. I mean, you can flip a hamburger for 15, right? Is that what it is? And that's the other thing. And I think what we also saw, and I think this goes across the board, was we watched our pencil pushers, our folks that were in upper management, our desk jockeys per se, they didn't get it. They sat behind their desks. They were free of COVID.
We talked about this 2 weeks ago. You were so far removed from the field.
Yes.
You were so far removed from the battle line that you forgot what it was like.
Yes. So what ends up happening is, your managers, your leadership, they lost that sympathy and empathy of what you're going through out there in the field. They want quick turnarounds. They want patients moved. The hospital wants patients moved.
It turns into money.
Well, it does turn into money, but it also turned into detrimental to our first responders.
Yeah.
It turned into a detrimental situation where the only way out was we were watching our colleagues take their own lives.
Well, here, let me ask you this. How many times did anybody reach out and say, hey, you good? Through everything that's going on, are you good?
Oh, let me answer that, please.
Sure.
Here's a big giant shit show of a sandwich, and we'll call that 2020.
Okay.
Here's a pizza. You're doing great.
Here's a pizza. I didn't do that to you, did I?
No, sir. No, sir. No, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. But how many times did that happen?
Absolutely, and that's my point. How
You
many
have
times
reached out to
in
me
the
before
I
during
have.
but how
COVID
many times in the first responder world, fire, EMS, police, did anybody reach out and say, "Hey, this shit sucks"?
Yeah.
all the time.
How are you handling it? How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah.
And I think that rolls into what SCARS is.
Yeah, and
It is, yeah.
I strongly believe that there was times that as a fire chief and as an EMS supervisor, whatever the hell you want to call that, that I did put my boots on the floor and make sure that I was into the shit with the responders.
You got him a paint sprayer?
Yep.
I did get a paint sprayer. I spent way too much on that paint sprayer, but I did get that. Yes.
I love that paint spray.
But
It was a
but I
wagon.
felt that was important. That if you're taught early in management, never ask your subordinates to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
That's the biggest crock of
But
shit.
none of us, a lot of us, weren't out there running these COVID calls with our crews.
that's right.
And
So
putting
think
the
about that.
Tyvek suits on and putting the damn mask on
So-
and riding that call.
So think about what you were willing to do in what you're telling people to do, what you're telling your subordinates to do. Think about that for a second of when we were young in the fire service, shit, we'd do anything.
Oh yeah.
Anything. If my dad told me to run through a house freaking naked, here I come,
Yep.
world, look out.
You
Here comes me.
You get a water can, flip flops, and a pair of boxer shorts.
Right.
Run through that burning building. That's what we did.
I'm on it.
Yes.
Is anybody coming with me? And you know what's sad is when you turned around, you had 3 people behind you. And in this world,
What are you doing? Chief said to do it. I don't know.
I don't know where I'm going.
look out, here comes us. And but where does that lead us? We're so far separated from that.
Yes.
In our role of leaders, in our role of managers, well, listen to the stories that I used to do. Well, we didn't deal with COVID-19. We didn't deal with what the news is saying. We didn't deal with half the stuff that these kids today are dealing with. But all we can say is, listen to my story.
Right.
I did this. Well, it shouldn't be like that. We should take the time to listen. As leaders, we should take the time to listen to what they're going through, because what they're going through is different. And as an effective leader and as a good leader, we have to learn. We got to roll with it. We got to listen to them more so than telling them.
I mean, imagine if you did make it through, which I'm proud to say just about everybody on this feed that I can see, most of them have made it all the way through COVID. I mean, these people now are your senior people.
Yeah,
These are the people you have to be listening to.
that's right.
Because when it could, I'll tell you, if I had my choice between listening to somebody who day one or day 3 year one, day one, whatever, 3 year day one, to be able to say,
I know I'm going
to be able to say, hey, I need to teach donning and doffing of PPE equipment. I want somebody who went through a COVID pandemic.
Why wouldn't you?
Right, but we can't see past that because, well, we know everything. We know it all. No, you don't. Just stop and just. This is where the problems start. Is because you're too busy. Everybody's too busy wanting to make sure they get their point across. Look what we did. Look what we did. No, that's not what this is about. This is not a competition.
Absolutely.
No part of public safety is a competition.
No.
Yeah, we can gig each other, and we do a lot.
So when you make that comment, though, Patrick, when you make that comment that these are the future leaders, these are the future managers, and they're going to be able one day to say that I lived through this, and I did this, and I did that. In 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, what is that going to mean? What is going to be that new epidemic? What is going to be that new COVID-19? And are they going to be able to make the difference to be able to say, this is what I did, or this is how my boss treated me, and this is what I want to do different?
Oh, we're going to highlight this one. COVID made us realize who wasn't an effective leader too. I think the U.S. as a whole fumbled the response through the pandemic. Fumbled through the response. That's correct. That's 100% correct. At a more local level, administrations and EMS hospitals let their employees down in many ways. There were many people who genuinely cared and tried to help, but too many leaders failed us. That is, I wish, I can't, I gotta find a way to grab that. Right on, because that is exactly the truth. Because COVID did highlight a level of leadership that we were never ready for.
Right.
Did you ever think in your time in leadership management and in any part of that you're going to be faced with a national pandemic?
Never. And like I said, I think because we went through H1N1 and all the things, SARS and the things that were associated with that this was going to be the same deal. This was going to be no big deal. A couple weeks of just absolute pandemonium, as I'd call it. And then it was going to go back to business as usual, but we didn't see it on this time.
12, 16 weeks would be over.
Yep.
That's kind of what a lot of people thought. Very good, Courtney. Very good. That was a very well stated comment, and it holds a lot of truth to it. And that brings all of this first full circle to me to think of when you are when you're leading through a crisis. Mm-hmm. There's a class out. It's called Leading Through Crisis, or it's a book out called Leading Through Crisis. And what is a crisis at that point in time?
Right.
Is the crisis the overabundance of calls that you have to run with very minimal staffing? Is the crisis the pay that your people are deserving of that they can't get because they're not being paid that?
Right.
We had so many different crises going on, mm-hmm. and we had to figure out a way to lead through that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, my goodness, there were just, there were so many failures during COVID.
Well, and the rules. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit, but I'll go back to it. The rules changed every day, right? So if you went to a nursing home, the rules were different. If you went to this hospital, the rules were different. If you went to a scene call, the rules were different. We had fire departments coming out and saying, hey, we're staging in station. We had law enforcement who didn't have proper PPE and was the last ones to get PPE. So we had all these chips stacked against first responders across the nation, and a lot of folks just gave up.
Chris said, I feel as managers, we try to treat it as another large-scale incident. You're right. Because we didn't have any other basis to go off of. That's what we had to go. That's what we had to go off of. What was that? We thought that it was just another large-scale incident. Jason Morgan, leaders should lead from the front, not from the rear. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because
you want a good example of that? And I actually got this from church this morning. Go watch the movie Braveheart again. He always led from the front.
But even with that, is that easier said than done?
Where did you go?
I had to fix a fire.
Yeah. It was starting to get a little chilly in here, so we made Josh
We started talking.
Some logs in the
I
fire.
was listening, but I had to
Yeah,
fix a fire.
put logs in the fire.
I had to fix a fire. I'm sorry.
And we're running out of propane over there, so
I ain't worried about that,
We're double
gotta-
whammied in here.
I gotta fix the fire. But what does that mean? I feel like I know what that means, but what does that mean? That leaders have to lead from the front. What does that mean?
What did it mean to you? What does it mean to you?
I don't know if I can answer that. I know what I want to say is that I was connected to the guys. I know I felt like I was connected. In a corporate world, I worked for CSX and I felt like CSX handled it amazingly. They didn't mandate anything until the last minute. And then they mandated, and then within 24 hours of the final mandate, they pulled it and said, hey, it's up to you. If you want to do it, it's up to you. With the vaccine, it's up to you. But they listened. Mm-hmm. They listened. And all the other Class 1 railroads mandated it, and they lost a lot of what I would call their generals of being able to know railroading. So how many people did we lose? How many generals did we lose in fire and EMS?
For me, the leading from the front meant that I was not afraid to get out from behind the desk and go put on the PPE and stand with my providers or work a patient.
But how many times did you do that?
As often as I could.
Okay.
As often as I could.
Okay.
You know?
But how
I mean,
many
but not everybody did
listeners?
that.
But how many of our listeners had leaders that did that?
Right.
Oh, well, we have this neat little thing called comments, so everybody put it in there.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Did you see?
We're not reaching out and
we're
telling your
not saying
boss.
just your, we're not saying just your, but this may be a problem that generates long before COVID. How many times did your boss, not your direct supervisor, but your upper management come out and observe a call or stand beside you on a call? You know, and I think that's important.
Shane, we have talked about scars. The scars of my COVID stuff will never go away. It's a completely different feeling when you're told that people want you dead and that you're going to burn your house down all because of something the news thought they had the right information about.
That's interesting.
Well,
that's
I mean,
a whole.
I mean, think
that's
about
a whole different level.
Think about today's effing media. All this fake news crap that you got going
know what
on.
that is. It keeps
It's
coming up.
one of my groups. Sorry.
Oh.
But you know, what the media was telling the world, as opposed to what the CDC was telling us, because we got CDC briefings.
Right. Quite often.
We got state health
Well,
department
now the
briefings, local
CDC
health departments.
spokesperson was on Fox and CNN.
Oh, okay.
Get out.
You want me to go fix the fire
Yeah,
again?
yeah. I think the fire needs more logs.
but I mean, but that was, you know, so Shane's right. He had, you know, you had these people going, well, they told us that, you know, you haven't, you know, that there's a national shortage. How are you wearing PPEs? Is that reused? You know, you had people blaming you for something that you probably weren't even doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, I mean, just imagine, and you know, the people that stuck it out.
Yes, Nick, you're right. I would come and help just to get out of paperwork. Usually schedule. Schedule was was
Every day.
was what I hated.
But you know, even with what Emily said, and this is completely different from the fire and EMS and the first responders, but so many leaders were instructed to stay away.
Wayne, you caused more paperwork than 4 employees, so thanks, pal.
Well, but so let's highlight that. So there were EMS agencies, and it's true. There were EMS, fire, law enforcement. The administration side of it, there were several people that were, hey, you can do this from home. Go home.
But it was important. They were
you have
enforcing separation.
Right.
Because if you two were on the front line and I was the administrative person, but I was equally as trained as what you two were.
You were probably fixing the fire anyways.
I was fixing the fire, but how if it's about this, if it's about the money, and all of our, no matter what, even the volunteers, it's always all about the money. It is
Sure.
always about
Everything.
business. Absolutely, it's what makes the world turn. But it's left us with the emotional effects, hence scars.
Well,
But how do we roll into that? How do if my employer is saying, "Hey, as a leader, I'm telling you to stay away. You guys go deal with it." do what you need to do, and then at that point in time that you two go down, then somebody, they have a reserve to come in. And that's kind of, I was home with the railroad for maybe a week, and then I drove myself crazy and I had to get back out in the field.
You mean you drove your wife crazy?
Same thing.
difference.
Same thing.
Same difference. But I was back in the field. I had to.
Yeah.
It's important to be in the field and showing the people that, hey, look at me. I'm out here with you guys. I'm loving it. I'm doing it. Here I am. But how does that fit into your guys' world?
Well, the last two comments, what money and nothing has changed. So, and
Brian doesn't see the money.
Well, the thing is, talk about hospital money. How much was the hospital getting for taking COVID patients? Why do you think they cleared those floors?
That's right.
They didn't clear those floors to prepare for COVID.
No.
They cleared those floors because the federal government was going
They
to pay
were-
them out to take them COVID
That's
patients.
right. That's right.
Because they had so many places
just
going,
because-
"Don't come here."
Don't come here.
Dylan didn't see the money doesn't mean that somebody didn't see the money. There
Correct.
was money to be made. At the end of the day, no matter what emotional ride that you had,
It's a sad.
it
Damn
was not
sad.
the sad.
It was
It
the
was the
sad.
sad.
Unbelievable. It was not about your emotional roller coaster. It was about the final dollar. I believe that. I really believe that. And I think that's how important what we're doing is, because it's more than just the money.
Take another slice out of this pie of
I wanna
look
go
at
toward that
all
group. I know.
of the contract jobs for EMS that occurred that were paying thousands
Oh, yeah.
of dollars by
Yeah.
the week. I mean, you were making upwards of, in some cases, $37.50 an hour, and $75+ an hour for nurses, to be contracts. And you like there
Yeah,
were
but I
people-
think you get that still even today.
I don't think as much. I think contracting also hurt the workforce because here's how. Because they did this and they got so used to the money. You're going to come back to an agency that was paying pennies on the dollar?
No, you're right. Absolutely right.
So now you have these people that come back, and EMS agencies have made the money, but all we got was a couple little bonuses and a lot of stress. Now, there's some of that's truth, Brian.
Sure.
There is some of that's truth, because it's all about did your agency want to invest in their people, not you
Right.
per se, but in the people.
What were travel nurses getting offered? I think Kim was on there a little bit ago. I don't know if she still is or not. But what was travel nurses? And I
110
know
there
at
were-
New
there
York
were
City,
some 110 an hour.
yeah, and paramedics were getting that same kind of rates. I mean, we actually had some folks. We had at least one that went to New York, I think, to do a paramedic contract, and then another one went to Texas to do an EMT contract.
100 what?
But
150 an hour. is what-
150 an hour?
150 an hour. Now down. But down to what?
Down?
75? I mean, so these contract rates were out of control. So there was money coming in from COVID.
Yeah.
So
But
Yeah.
Brandon, the water companies sure needed that COVID relief money.
right, yeah, and the museums and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got
It was a way to keep it afloat.
yeah.
It's like another automotive.
Absolutely.
like
Bailout.
Yeah, an automotive
Yeah.
bailout.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot to COVID that added to an already stressed environment. I mean, it was honestly.
Emily,
was-
you're getting cheated.
there was a lot. There was a lot of that had. A lot of this was the tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
When COVID started, how many people ended their career?
Yeah.
I would love to. I don't even know if it's trackable. I'll dig to see if I can find a number. But I mean, you could probably go based off of research cycles.
I will tell you that, and this is me completely personally. I recently, as y'all know, I'm not involved in EMS at all at the very moment, other than doing sales. But I resigned from Health Net because it just got to a point where it was just too much. The 24-hour shifts, the COVID patients, the whole thing, and so that's what Scars became from is this is the new calling is We want to save you guys. We want to help guide the new generation in the right direction. So
And this is honestly the, when it comes down to dealing with the scars of COVID, the scars of trauma, this is not just, and you said it perfectly every time we've talked about scars. This is not physical. These are the mental scars that you have
That's
felt,
right.
and you're going to continue to feel, because this is not going to stop.
That's right.
Because it is going to continue. We're not going to flip a switch one day in 2023 or 2024 and everything's going to be perfect, because it's not going to happen. These are this is the stuff that we're going to be dealing with, and we want to get ahead of it. That's the whole reason that we're sitting right here.
Yep.
It's not the fact that we want to push a product on you. It's not the fact that we want you to go, get drugged up on medicines or dive into a hole of drinking. We want to set up the next generation of police, fire, EMS, any type of public safety, dispatch, anything. We want to set them up for success.
yes,
Because this is the most it's the most talked about topic, but there's nothing done about it.
Right.
It's talked about an awful lot. But this is the steps to start it. And we can't start it without you guys. And that is the whole reason of doing this.
That's where we need everybody's help. We're just now at an hour. We try to keep these to an hour, so I think we could go on a lot longer, but I think everybody would start getting really worn out. A couple things that I want to mention, though. Everybody that's commented on here, like it, share it. Let's get this word out further. Let's get our YouTube up to 50 subscribers so that we can go live on YouTube the same time we do this. Shout out here to number one. I want to put a shout out to Jason Morgan, who joined us tonight. I want you on the next show, buddy. I think you got some good insight from the law enforcement side that we could use to our benefit. I want to give another shout out to Chris Batlow. For those of us that know Chris going through a little rough time. He had a widowmaker and didn't know it. For the most part. So he's laying in the hospital in Charleston, South Carolina right now, waiting to get a bypass. There's a Facebook page out, GoFundMe. Do you have a link to that?
There's a GoFundMe. The GoFundMe link will be in the description for the video on Facebook and on YouTube. There will be a
Perfect.
link to it. Those of you all who don't know Chris was my mentor. We did the Dirty South medicine.
The Dirty South. Yeah, the Dirty C, the Dirty Charleston.
But he made me a lot of what I am today. Him and his family.
So he's to blame.
he is to
He is to
blame. Yes, he is.
Him and his family mean a whole hell of a lot to myself. I know they mean a whole hell of a lot to Dylan. If you have that $10, $20 extra to spare, please help a brother while he's down. Because I know without a shadow of a doubt, Chris, Katie would help anybody at any given moment in time, because those are the type of people that they are. So we'll throw the description in we'll throw the link in both the descriptions. And yes, Marshana, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I will pop up the YouTube address for what it is. Go on there, subscribe, and then hit the bell so you're notified. And hopefully by the time we do our next video in 2 weeks, we'll have it ready to do a live stream to it as well.
We just started an Instagram too. You want to talk about that just
Yep.
briefly?
The Instagram page is up and ready to go. It's at Scars FR Services. Instagram is kind of it's kind of in a land of its own. So there's going to be a lot of sharing of stuff regarding mental health that you'll see on there from other places that we follow through there. If you're interested in scars, if you're interested in being a voice, if you're interested in sitting with us, if you have ideas, anything like that, the email address has been up for the last few minutes, and I'll post it up again here in just a few minutes. Shoot us an email. Give us your ideas. Tell us your stories. Help us help other people through you. What have you been through that you were able to accomplish, or what are you going through that you need help with?
Create our kitchen table.
Correct.
Yeah,
Create
and
our
our
kitchen
long-term
table.
goal is, we want guests. We want people here with us. We want to have roundtable discussions.
We have 10 chairs. And
We're not doing an OnlyFans, Larry. Nobody wants to see that. Thanks, bud.
I just puked.
Yeah. Josh, I think
Hey, so along with Chris, we also have one of our local guys here in Harrison County, Patrick St. Julian, that
Yes.
has been diagnosed with cancer. That has an OnlyFans. Oh my God!
we're going way down the wrong
No,
path
Jamie,
here.
he does not have an OnlyFans account. I promise you. He has a GoFundMe account.
He has a GoFundMe page.
Wow.
Even though the
Okay.
one could make more than the other, I don't know.
Right,
But
yeah.
at the end of the day, if you could find it in your wallet to be able to help him out, we would greatly appreciate it.
Guys, the bold facts of this is that mental health is not going to go away, or it's not going to magically get better. It's not going to. There's nothing about mental health that's ever going to go away. It's always going to be here. It's always going to be at the forefront, and our dedication is that we're going to continue to push it forward. We are going to need the help of others, though. This is not something that we're going to do on our own. We're going to be a driving force, and I'm telling you right now that the three of us are dedicated. We're here. We're ready to talk about it. We are ready for you to help us grow our table. If we see people that we think are a good fit, we've reached out to several
Yes.
already. I mean, we're doing the work on the back end. But if you want to come sit at our table and tell your story, then shoot us an email.
If you want to sit here and watch the show
Yeah.
and talk to us, give us ideas before we come on.
You don't have to be on the camera.
Give us a shout.
right.
You know, we're looking at 2 weeks from today. I may have a conflict in scheduling, so we'll see how that works out. But you know, if we can do a minimum of every 2 weeks or so, I think it'll be very beneficial for the organizations and the folks that want to join us. We're still working on getting a bank account and such set up so that we can get some funding in. And we still want to send people to classes. You know, there's a lot of different classes. There's actually
Mental health resiliency officer through the NAEMT, which I'm
Yep.
currently taking.
Yep.
Great class.
There's a suicide prevention, I believe, some sort of a seminar coming up at a church in Morgantown, Kingdom Church in Morgantown, next Saturday from 9 to 3. Check out their website. Great
Kingdom
family, Kingdom. Put it on the comments there. What's it called? Kingdom. I'm not sure what but
We'll post it.
the pastor there, Kevin, is a great resource. Very interested in the first responder community, from what I can tell. So another resource. So some free training, some paid training. We're looking to do all of that. We're looking to bring folks on board and really, really push this forward.
Before we depart, over the last, we can say 3 days, 4 days, there's been a lot of death involving first responders. Temple, Texas, or Temple University.
Temple University,
Temple
out
University.
at Philadelphia, PA, had a line of duty death. I'm not sure the circumstances. I know that there was a call that went sour, and a police officer lost his life there. That was yesterday or last night, I believe. Fredericksburg
Fire Department in Stafford County, Virginia. They lost a member, a very good member that is a close friend of one of our subscribers and our watchers. A very sad outcome for a great man. He was a DC firefighter, worked with Nick Martin. Nick Martin did a great post on Facebook today about it. But as you're thinking about things that are going on in your life, remember that they are affecting other people as well. Keep these people in your prayers. Reach out to somebody this week. I think that's a good challenge. Reach out to somebody this week and just make sure that they're okay. If you see somebody struggling, if you see somebody that's just not having that good of a day, you said it yourself earlier. I reached out to Dylan. I've reached out to Josh. I mean, we all chat fairly commonly.
pretty regular, yeah.
We do but do your buddy check-in. Make sure everybody's okay. And it's a challenge for this week, but it's going to continue.
You folks that, and especially in fire and EMS, you work pretty regularly with the same folks. You will notice, does their eating habits change? Has their their phone habits changed? Have they just been felt disconnected? Check on them, see if they're okay.
That's right.
And law enforcement's the same way. You guys know how your brothers and sisters normally act. If you see something, say something. And this is where it starts. It starts with us. We're going to build something great here, and we want all of you to be a part of it.
Guys, thank you very much for joining us. We're an hour and 15 minutes. I cannot believe that already.
I can't either.
That was a quick one. But thank you guys for joining us. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any suggestions that you might have even, feel free to shoot us an email at scarsfrservices@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and we'll see you guys back here. We'll post, but right now we're looking at March the 5th, be 2 weeks from today.
That's what we're looking at. Yeah, there may be a little conflict just because Monroeville Fire Expo is that weekend as well, and I know I have to be there for work. I don't know when I can get out of that, so we'll try like hell for that to be the next date. If not, we'll shoot from the hip and get something posted just very shortly.
Guys, thank you very much, and we hope to see you next time.